When most of us look back at our childhood, we smile. We get nostalgic. We think about playgrounds, cartoons, scraped knees, and lazy summer evenings. And part of us wishes we could go back. Even now, when we act a little childish, we just laugh it off and say, "There's still a kid inside me." But for a girl named Ruby, childhood wasn't something to smile about. In fact, it was something she spent most of her life trying to escape. Ruby was an only child, and her home was far from peaceful. Her parents fought constantly, and not just arguments. We're talking full-blown screaming matches, violence, even throwing things. Her mother was an alcoholic, and to make things worse, she was also unfaithful. Ruby grew up watching her mom come and go with different men, leaving her dad heartbroken and humiliated. Now, her father, he wasn't perfect, but he tried. He wasn't rich, not even close, but he worked himself to the bone to take care of the family. And the irony? While her mom was out drinking and cheating, he was the one paying all the bills, covering for her, and trying to hold the house together. Ruby saw all of this, and even though she was just a kid, she understood more than she let on. And here's the worst part. The place where all this chaos was happening. It wasn't even big. There was no second room to hide in, no place to escape. Everything. The fighting, the drinking, the abuse, it all happened right in front of her. Most nights, she'd press her hands over her ears just to drown out the yelling, wishing she could disappear. As the years passed, the tension only got worse. Her parents' relationship grew more toxic. Her dad had less and less time for her. He'd leave for work early, come home late, and spend the little energy he had fighting with her mother. By the time Ruby turned 16, her world felt like it was caving in. Their financial situation was getting worse, and she made a difficult decision. She dropped out of school to start working part-time. At first, she told herself she'd balance work and studies, but between the chaos at home and the pressure at work, she couldn't keep up. Eventually, she chose the job and gave up on school altogether. She started working at a local cafe. And this is where things take a surprising turn. Ruby was determined to make it work. She gave everything she had to that job, staying late, taking extra shifts, doing more than she was asked, and her hard work didn't go unnoticed. The cafe owners came to trust her completely. In fact, they told her, straight up, no matter what happens, this job is yours. That kind of security is rare, especially for a teenager with no qualifications. But Ruby had earned it. Right next to the cafe, there was a clothing showroom owned by an elderly man named Rahman. He was in his 60s, kind, observant, and over time he started seeing Ruby like the daughter he never had. And Ruby, she respected him, trusted him, and it's a good thing she did, because Rahman would end up playing a massive role in the terrifying chain of events that was about to unfold. One evening, just like any other, Ruby was behind the counter working a late shift when someone walked through the cafe door. Someone she would never forget. It was supposed to be just another quiet shift at the cafe. Ruby was cleaning tables, restocking the counter, going through the motions like she always did. But then the front door opened, and a man walked in. At first, Ruby didn't think much of it. But then she looked up, and her entire body froze. This guy didn't look real. He was in his mid-20s, maybe 25 or 26. His skin was almost glowing, pale like milk. His eyes, piercing blue, the kind of blue you don't forget. And the way he dressed. It was all traditional Muslim attire, but nothing ordinary. The fabric looked expensive, the style, elegant. From head to toe, he looked like someone who came from wealth, or from another world entirely. And Ruby couldn't stop staring. He walked up to the counter, gently asked for a coffee, and sat down at a table. Ruby, still caught off guard, made the coffee and brought it over. The guy didn't even look at her. He was buried in his phone, casually scrolling like this was just another normal day. Ruby turned to walk away, but then something weird happened. A tiny thread from her sleeve got caught on his watch, just a little snag, but it stopped her in her tracks. It was one of those strange, movie-like moments, you know the kind, where two people get tangled up and time slows down. She tried to free the thread without making a scene, But now he finally looked up. He glanced at her, smiled and said, "I'm so sorry." "That's my fault, madam." Ruby didn't respond. She was too stunned. The guy gently took off his watch and freed the thread himself, then looked her in the eyes and asked, "What's your name?" Barely above a whisper, she said, "Ruby." Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, nearly sprinting to the back of the cafe. And the man, he just smiled to himself, drank his coffee, and left. But Ruby, she couldn't stop thinking about him. That night, lying in bed, she replayed the moment over and over. She was embarrassed. Why did I just walk away like that? Why couldn't I say something? But the very next day, he came back, and the day after that, and the day after that. He started showing up every single day, always ordering the same thing, always choosing the same table, and always smiling at Ruby. At first, their conversations were short, polite hellos, the occasional question, but slowly Ruby began to open up. They'd talk, laugh, and sometimes it would just be the two of them alone in the cafe sharing these quiet little moments. And while this should have been a dreamy, maybe even romantic thing, something felt off. Because around the same time he started coming, Ruby's health began to unravel. It started small, a weird heaviness in her chest, strange fatigue, headaches that wouldn't go away. At first she thought it was just the stress, maybe overwork, maybe lack of sleep, but then came the other stuff. Every time the guy left, Ruby would feel this wave of anxiety. She'd sweat, she'd get dizzy, her breathing would quicken, and at night, things got worse. Sometimes she'd wake up drenched in sweat, gasping for air. Other nights, she couldn't even get out of bed. Her bones ached. Her body was so sore she needed multiple painkillers just to move. And all the while, the image of that man, his smile, his eyes, stayed in her head like a brand she couldn't shake. And there was one more thing than the smell. He always wore the same cologne, a rich, sweet, almost otherworldly fragrance. It was so strong that even after he left, the scent would linger in the cafe for hours. Then, about a month in, Ruby started smelling it at home. No one else in the house wore anything like that. Yet her bedroom would sometimes fill with that same exact scent, as if he had just walked through the door. And just like that, her body began to fail her. She was constantly exhausted. She lost weight. Her skin became pale. Her joints throbbed. Eventually it got so bad, she went to the doctor. They ran every test they could. And when the results came back, nothing. She was perfectly healthy, at least on paper. Her father thought she was just burned out. He told her to take a few days off from the cafe and rest. And so, reluctantly, she stayed home. But that's when things got worse. Her energy dipped even lower. Her skin turned yellow. Her body started losing blood. With no injury, no explanation. She barely had the strength to stand. Everyone in the house noticed. Her mom, her dad, they were terrified. And yet, despite looking like death, sometimes for a few moments her body would glow, literally. There would be this strange shimmer to her skin, like she was lit from the inside. Her parents noticed it too. It didn't make any sense. How could a girl this sick look beautiful? But it didn't stop there, because soon, Ruby's personality began to change. Ruby wasn't just feeling sick anymore, she was changing. This once sweet, quiet, soft-spoken girl, the kind who apologized even when someone else was wrong, had turned into someone else entirely. She snapped at people. She raised her voice. She spoke like she was angry at the world. Her parents were shocked. Even Rahman, the neighbor who knew her better than most, had no idea what was happening. Then one night, things hit a breaking point. Ruby's body gave out. She collapsed to the ground, screaming in pain, clutching her stomach. Her skin looked almost gray. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her eyes barely stayed open. Rahman rushed her to the hospital while calling her parents. Her mother showed up first, frantic. Her father arrived shortly after, completely stunned. She was fine, he kept repeating. She was just getting better, but she wasn't. She was worse than ever. Ruby drifted in and out of consciousness. She barely spoke. At times she didn't even respond. Her body was cold, her pulse was weak, and the doctors couldn't explain it. Every test came back normal, again. And then something strange happened. One afternoon, while Ruby lay in that hospital bed, too weak to open her eyes, the door creaked open. Someone walked in. She couldn't see him, but she felt his presence. And then, that smell. That same perfume. Strong, sweet, rich. The exact one worn by the mysterious man from the cafe. She didn't need to open her eyes. She knew it was him. He sat beside her and gently placed his hand on her head. His voice was soft, whispering to her, "Get well soon. I miss you." Ruby wanted to speak, but her mouth wouldn't open. She wanted to see him, but her body wouldn't move. She just lay there, suspended between sleep and wakefulness, listening to his voice, breathing in his scent. And then, just as suddenly as he came, he was gone. The next morning, Ruby woke up like nothing had ever happened. She sat up in bed. Her skin looked better. Her eyes were brighter. Her energy, it somehow had returned. She stood up. She laughed. She told the nurses she felt amazing. Within hours, the doctors were baffled. Just days earlier, they thought she might not make it. Now, she was walking around like nothing was wrong. Her parents were thrilled, relieved. Ruby smiled, hugged them, told them she was fine. But deep down, something still didn't sit right. Because she remembered his voice, his hand on her head, his scent in the room, and the way he spoke to her, like he'd been watching over her the whole time. The next day, Ruby did something no one expected. She went back to the cafe. Even the cafe owner was surprised. He told her to rest more, take her time. Her job was safe, but Ruby insisted. She said, "I need to work. I need to feel normal again." That evening, as the sun began to set, Ruby was back behind the counter, just like before, and that's when the cafe door opened. It was him. Same perfect face, same glowing skin, same blue eyes, same scent that followed him everywhere. Ruby didn't waste time. "Did you come to the hospital?" she asked. And the man, he didn't deny it. He smiled, looked at her gently and said, "Yes, I did. I asked around. I found out where you were. I had to see you. I care about you." Ruby didn't know what to say. No one had ever cared for her like that. Not her mom, not even really her dad. She had never had someone show up without being asked. Someone who noticed when she wasn't there. Someone who missed her. And in that moment, something changed between them. From that day on, their bond grew closer. But something else was happening too. Something Ruby couldn't ignore. Whenever she wasn't near him, her body would start to shut down again. And here's the strange part. After 2 whole months of seeing him almost every day, Ruby still didn't know his name. She didn't know where he lived, what he did for a living, who his family was. She didn't even know his last name. She kept telling herself she'd ask. She even made a mental list of all the questions. But every time he walked through that door, she forgot everything. And then one day, everything changed. Ruby was cleaning outside the cafe early in the morning when she noticed something odd. A man walking down the street, slowly, quietly. He was a fakir, a poor man, a wandering mystic in tattered clothes, and for some reason he stopped right outside the cafe and just stared. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the building like he could see something inside it that no one else could. Rahman, the old neighbor, saw him too. He stepped outside and asked, "Can I help you? Are you lost?" The fakir didn't look away. He just said one thing. "There's something evil here. Someone's life is in danger." Then he turned and walked away. A minute later, Ruby came outside with the trash. She smiled when she saw Rahman, but the second she stepped near the fakir, he froze. He turned, looked her dead in the eye, and whispered, "Ya Allah." Then he turned around and ran. The fakir didn't say another word, didn't explain himself, didn't even glance back. He just disappeared down the street like he'd seen a ghost. Ruby and Rahman stood there frozen, both staring in the direction he ran. Neither of them said anything, but both were thinking the same thing. What the hell was that? And just 10 minutes later, Ruby doubled over in pain. She clutched her stomach and collapsed right there on the sidewalk, screaming. It wasn't just a cramp or a dizzy, this was a full-blown breakdown. Her body was spasming, her face turned white. She was sweating, gasping for air. Rahman rushed to her side and yelled for help. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived and rushed her to the hospital. Again. Her mom and dad got there fast, but this time, it was different. This wasn't stress. This wasn't exhaustion. This was something else. Her father stood over her hospital bed, watching the monitors, watching his daughter, the same daughter who was just fine yesterday, now fighting for her life again. And then Rahman remembered something. That fakir. There's something evil here. Someone's life is in danger. Those words rang louder now. And suddenly, Rahman knew this wasn't a hospital problem. This wasn't something modern medicine could fix. So he leaned in and told Ruby's dad, "We need to take her somewhere else." And just like that, they made the decision. They took Ruby out of the hospital and brought her to a local Maulvi, a religious healer, someone who was known for dealing with the unseen. But when the Maulvi saw Ruby, he stepped back, visibly shaken. He looked at her, his hands trembling, and said, "How is she even alive?" Then he shook his head and told them something no one wanted to hear. "I can't help her. Whatever's inside her, it's too strong. I'm sorry." Rahman begged. Her father pleaded, "Please, if not you, then who?" The Maulvi sighed, looked down, then whispered the name of a Pir Baba, a powerful spiritual guide known for dealing with the darkest, most dangerous forces. He gave them directions to a remote village nearly 2 hours away. Before they left, he handed them something, a protective taweez, a sacred talisman. "Keep this on her," he said. "Don't take it off. It's the only thing keeping her safe until you get there." They tied the taweez around Ruby's neck, carried her into the car and hit the road. Ruby, barely conscious, was mumbling, sweating, twitching. At one point, she stopped moving entirely, but they kept driving. Eventually, they reached a small, quiet house on the edge of a forest. Outside, an old man sat cross-legged, eyes closed, a string of prayer beads in his hands. He was chanting something under his breath, completely still. This was the Pir Baba. They approached slowly, unsure whether to interrupt, but before they could say a word, the Pir Baba suddenly smiled, as if he already knew, as if he'd been waiting for them. They sat down in front of him, laid Ruby on the floor. Her pain had subsided, for now, but her skin was ice cold, and her body felt wrong, like she wasn't fully there. Rahman explained everything: the cafe, the man, the sickness, the perfume, the hospital visits, the glowing skin, and the fakir. The Pir Baba said nothing. He just kept counting his prayer beads, and then when Rahman finished, the Pir Baba leaned forward, recited a quiet prayer, and blew softly onto Ruby's forehead. And then it happened. From Ruby's body, something white began to rise. A faint, fog-like shadow slowly lifted from her chest. It hovered in the air for a second, and then drifted back, forming a human-like shape. Everyone in the room gasped, and in the blink of an eye, standing right there in front of them, was a beautiful man in a white robe, wearing an Afghani turban. Ruby opened her eyes wide. She knew exactly who it was. It was him, the man from the cafe, the man with the blue eyes, the man whose scent had haunted her for weeks. He looked down at Ruby and smiled, then turned and respectfully saluted the Pir Baba. The Pir Baba stared back. "Who are you?" he asked. "And what are you doing to this girl?" But the man didn't answer. He kept looking at Ruby and gently said, "Have I ever hurt you?" Ruby, almost entranced, shook her head slowly, but the Pir Baba wasn't having it. "I'm not asking her," he said firmly. "I'm asking you." Finally, the man turned to him, smiled faintly, and said, "You already know who I am." Then he bowed his head to everyone in the room and said the words no one expected. "My name is Wasim, and I am a Jinn." When the man in white, Wasim, revealed what he truly was, the air in the room changed. It wasn't just shock, it was something heavier, ancient, unnatural. Ruby lay on the floor, barely able to move, but her eyes were locked on him. This wasn't just a hallucination, this wasn't a fever dream, this was real. The Pir Baba leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Why are you here?" Wasim didn't flinch. He looked directly at Ruby and spoke softly. "I came for her. I've been inside her for 5 months, because I love her." Ruby's father stood up, furious. "You, what?" But the Pir Baba raised a hand to silence him. Wasim continued, "At first I only watched her, from afar. But then 2 dark jinns, demons, took over her body. Evil ones. They were feeding off her life." Everyone froze. Wasim's voice grew deeper. "One of them fed on her blood. The other on her energy, her spirit. That's why she kept getting weaker. That's why no medicine worked. No one could see what was killing her. But I could." Pir Baba's eyes narrowed. "And what did you do?" Wasim stepped forward. "I entered her too, not to harm her, but to protect her." He said that since the day he entered Ruby, he'd been fighting the 2 demons from the inside. One of them he claimed he'd already driven out. The other was still hiding, still clinging to her, and all the pain Ruby had been feeling, the collapsing, the sickness, the strange glowing, that was the battle happening inside her body. Sometimes the demons got the upper hand, and when that happened, Ruby suffered. But Wasim never left. He refused to let them kill her. The Pir Baba studied him carefully. "Why are you telling us this now?" Wasim looked around the room, then bowed his head politely. "Because you brought her here to be saved. And now you know I'm the reason she's still alive." Then his voice changed, deeper, colder. "No one else could have protected her, and I won't let anyone remove me." Ruby's father stepped forward again, fists clenched, but Rahman held him back. The Pir Baba stayed calm and asked one final question. "So what do you want from her?" Wasim turned to Ruby, his face softened. "I don't want anything except to stay." He looked at her like a man who'd waited lifetimes just to be seen. And for the first time since she arrived, Ruby didn't look afraid, because despite everything, the sickness, the mystery, the pain, this strange supernatural being was the only one who'd ever made her feel safe. And in that moment, the Pir Baba realized something. This Jinn wasn't lying, but that didn't mean it was over. After Wasim confessed everything, that he was a Jinn, that he'd been living inside Ruby for months, and that he was protecting her, the room went still. Rahman and Ruby's father didn't know what to say, but the Pir Baba, who'd dealt with the supernatural before, asked the one question that still hadn't been answered. "If you're protecting her, then why is she still suffering?" Wasim, for the first time, looked tired. His voice dropped. "Because I can't fight them all at once. One of the demons is gone. I forced it out. But the other one, it's still clinging to her, still trying to drain what's left." The Pir Baba frowned. "You say you're saving her, but this girl nearly died." Wasim looked at Ruby, and for a moment his expression turned sad. She used to pray. A lot. She used to keep herself spiritually strong, and when she did that, I couldn't come near her. None of us could. But when the demons entered her, they clouded her mind. She stopped praying, stopped believing, and that's when I found a way in." He paused, then added, "I didn't come to harm her. I came to stop them, and I've done everything I can. But the second demon, it's not easy to push out." The Pir Baba nodded slowly. He'd heard enough. And then, without warning, he stood up and began preparing a ritual. He asked Rahman to bring him specific items: a chicken, some eggs, white cloth, incense. By the time everything was gathered, Ruby was laid down at the center of the room. The Pir Baba surrounded her with incense and covered her in the white cloth. Then he took the chicken, already prepared for sacrifice, and began waving it over her body. Suddenly, the chicken began to violently thrash. Everyone jumped back. The room felt heavier, colder. The shadows in the corners seemed to stretch and move. Something unseen was reacting to what the Pir Baba was doing. But he didn't stop. He handed Ruby a stick of incense and began whispering a set of sacred verses in her ear. When he finished, he stepped back and looked at everyone. Then he spoke. "I've removed the remaining demons from her body. She's free from them now." Ruby's father sighed in relief. Rahman held back tears. It was finally over. But the Pir Baba wasn't done. He looked directly at Ruby and said, "I need to tell you something, and it won't be easy to hear." Everyone fell quiet. "I've removed the evil spirits, but the Jinn, Wasim, he's still inside you, and I can't take him out." Ruby's eyes widened. The Pir Baba continued, "I've dealt with dozens of Jinn, but this one, he's different. I don't know what kind of power he holds, or how he managed to fight off those 2 demons on his own. But one thing is clear, he's not leaving." Ruby sat up slowly, unsure how to feel. "I can't give you a charm," the Pir Baba said. "I can't give you a prayer strong enough to push him out. I could try, but if I do, it won't be you who pays the price. It'll be your family." He looked directly at her father. "Wasim isn't lying. He truly wants to protect her, and right now, he might be the only reason nothing worse has happened." And with that, the Pir Baba ended the session, and in the end, Ruby, her father, and Rahman left the house in silence. It's been 6 to 7 months since that day, and since then, nothing bad has happened. No pain, no breakdowns, no hospital visits. Ruby's health has stayed perfectly normal, but deep down, she knows he's still there. She can feel him, like a second soul, quietly living inside her, protecting her, watching her. Her father took her to shrines, to other spiritual healers, but none of them could drive Wasim out. And honestly, Ruby doesn't want them to, because as strange as it sounds, he saved her. And she believes truly that if something ever tried to hurt her again, he'd stop it before it even got close. Some possessions destroy you, but some, as strange as it sounds, can protect you.